Well, it's been a big week for Africa. To help us unpack the DRC elections and the situation in Zimbabwe, we're joined in studio by Izak Khomo, the Channel Africa producer. Now, Izak, there are reports saying that the DRC opposition leader Martin Fayulu has asked his supporters to conduct peaceful protests after the Constitutional Court rejected his challenge. Do you think this is going to work?
Well, peaceful protest, for the first time you hear an opposition man calling for peaceful protest. But I think it's going to work because the forces of confusion in Kinshasa, they're balanced. So it's not a one-way thing.
Okay, but how successful do you think Fayulu will be in his endeavor to reclaim what he thinks is his position in the elections?
Well, I think it won't go far. That's why it's calling to the international community, to put sanctions against the winner. Yeah, but I think what's going to happen is this, that the whole thing is going to go to outside mediation. And I'm looking at a SADC as a body, which will call the president-elect and also the incumbent before he steps down, and also Martin Fayulu, where
yes,
they may come up with a coalition government, as happened in Kenya. So yes, that may be in the pipeline.
And there's also a portion of the election that still has to be conducted, because there were 3 areas that had been excluded from the actual elections already. Yeah. How big an impact will that have on the situation?
Well, the elections has got to be conducted will actually sort of only be it will be the parliamentary, and also to do with the local government elections. The presidential, I think that is shut. So these are the main general elections, 3-tier elections with the local government and also with the parliamentary elections.
Will it have any impact on Fayulu's campaign?
Well, it won't have much, but I mean, with the parliamentary results, it may have an influence, because with the parliamentary majority, the person with the party with the parliamentary majority is the one which actually takes up the seat as prime minister, the head of government. But I think they've Kabilas party has got a majority as far as the parliamentary things are concerned. Yes. Yeah, so they will actually dominate the prime ministership.
Now, why is Martin Fayulu so adamant that Tshisekedi and Kabila have conducted a power-sharing deal?
Well, see, that's the thing, I mean to say that he's got no evidence towards that, and there's nothing wrong. But I mean to say that he's also a product of a deal. And that deal, he's a product of
Fayulu.
Fayulu is a product of a EU and American deal.
Yes.
Yeah. You see, I mean to say that's where everything went wrong. Why should the EU be interested and also play a very big part in trying to select candidates?
So tell us a little bit more about that. I mean, this is a kind of background about Fayulu and
people have not contextualized this whole thing. The whole thing is this, that about some 2-3 months ago, the opposition leaders were called to Brussels, and they were called by the European Union Commission, and they were housed by the European Union, and the European Union tried to get them to agree on one candidate. Okay. Yeah, they could never get an agreement, but then the Union, the France, everybody, America, they were actually behind. Herman Cohen, they were behind this thing. Eventually, they call them under the Kofi Annan foundation, yes, which is headed by, I forget the man's name, but he was a former MONUSCO leader, yes, and he's got very strong connections with the EU. Okay. So then when they went there, that's when they got Fayulu. But Fayulu has got very strong American energy sector support. Okay. Yeah, he was a former Exxon, Mobile right. Exxon, yes, yeah. And basically that's what's happening. What's happening in Kenya, in Congo DRC, yes, is this, that we've got a very strong Western lobby of the EU and the American energy sector, yes, which actually wants to have their candidate. They do not agree with the results of the elections because their candidate was not announced the winner of the elections. Yes. So that's what it's all about. It's an interference from outside, basically from Western countries.
Okay, so now how good are Fayulu's chances of overturning the result?
Well, his chances are, as far as internally, he's gone through the process.
Yes.
So that's why it's appealing to the external forces. I mean, you find that with the external forces, they even tried the AU.
Yes.
Yeah, the AU issue really was scandalous. The AU is only now 19, I think, presidents or head of states who went there, and then they come up with a body which is headed by Kagame, President Paul Kagame.
Yes.
But is Paul Kagame is he an independent person?
Yes.
Yeah, to actually head such a delegation. Yeah, he's not independent because he's guilty of interference in the Congo affair and politics.
Okay.
You know, putting Kagame there, it actually just shows that the AU itself is not serious. And again, Paul Kagame, he has just come from a very big meeting with the French.
Yes.
And where the French say that he's a person who's fit to head the Francophone group in Africa. So now basically you've got that man to head this thing, and he's got vested interest in the confusion of the confusion in the DRC to head a thing which is going to talk about the election. They should have got a neutral person. The AU itself is not serious.
Okay. So now, how good will let's just assume that, given the fact that Fayulu is tainted by his links to the outside, to the EU and to the US, how good will he be for the people of DRC?
Was that Fayulu or the
Fayulu?
Well, he could be good as anybody else. And because there's a very big saying says that a country is not led only by the person. The country is also led by the constitution and the laws of the country. Yeah? So is that how good is he that he's going to stick to the law? I think he'll be good at it. I think also Tshisekedi is a newcomer. And I think Tshisekedi is a newcomer, and let's give him a chance. Okay. I mean, it will be like the Angolan elections. If people remember the Angolan election, when the new person came in, they said that he's handpicked by the incumbent.
So let's talk about Tshisekedi for a moment. Yeah. The supporters of President-elect Tshisekedi are already celebrating since the announcement.
Yeah.
What does Tshisekedi's presidency mean for the country going forward?
Well, for the country, basically, it means that it's a new person who was not tainted by any big power politics. Yeah? So that's the only thing, and he's not got a backer from the outside the country. But also internally, there are people not happy about it, because Tshisekedi comes from his father's party, which basically is looked upon as a regional and a tribal party.
Okay.
But there's some element of truth in that. But I mean to say that going far now, going to the point that they've got this union with Kabilas party, and they've also got this other gentleman from the east. It could be that it's got a consensus. It could be that we'll have a national consensus, and that's what's really needed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to wrap up this DRC, we're going to talk about Zimbabwe in a moment.
Okay.
What are the chances then of a political settlement being reached? Because they're talking about a political settlement to settle this election.
Yeah, that's the SADC stance, because SADC has actually sort of put that proposition. And I think that's where SADC has got to come in. You see, SADC has been very bad when it comes to dealing with the Congo. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, but it's been very bad. And we actually mentioned it to them, saying that SADC, the DRC is part of SADC. But for all issues about the DRC, they left it to the Great Lakes regional body. But the Great Lakes regional body have got members of that body who have got vested interest in the domination of the Congo DRC. I'm talking about Rwanda and Uganda. I'm sorry about that. They don't like about that, but that's the truth. I'm just talking about generally where the logic lies.
Yes.
And the SADC actually sort of, it did not play SADC was the body which was supposed to play the very important part for over 5 to 6 years in solving the problems of the DRC. Yeah? So now SADC has got to step up to its responsibility to safeguard the member country. Yeah? The Great Lakes regional body has been shown that it's very, very divisive. So basically it's got to be out. SADC has got to take over the initiative. Okay.
So let's talk about Zimbabwe now. Zimbabwe has been racked with a series of a downward spiral of violence following the protests of the fuel protests. There's been crackdown from the security forces on protests, etc., etc., etc. So, what is the situation there? What are you reading in the situation?
Well, what you're reading is that's what it is. You can't read more than that. Just that what you can actually see is that economic takeoff and the good diplomacy, charm diplomacy of Mnangagwa with the West. When he came into power, he actually engaged with the West, especially Britain, in trying to show that his rule is going to be democratic, respect of human rights, liberalization, and also opening talks with the British on compensation, for settlement. What he was hoping was this, that the British and other European, the EU, and also the Americans would ease off the sanctions.
Yes.
But those sanctions have not got out, and those sanctions have driven Zimbabwe to what it is now.
Into this economic turmoil.
Into economic turmoil.
Yes.
So that's what you can read in that. So now they're going to go to Davos. Now there is going to be told, they've got him on his knees,
Yes, but now this crackdown, and he did say, Mnangagwa did say that this is just a taste of things to come. This is how he is going to handle all kinds of protests.
Well, there are two things. There's protest and there's rioting, and there is demonstration. There are three things. Now there is demonstration and protest. Those have got to go. They've got modus operandi. You've got to go and get a police thing. It's also here in South Africa. To say, in South Africa, if our guys down the road here, they come and protest and set up their roadblocks, what do they get? Don't they get rubber bullets?
Yes.
Yeah. Have you heard anybody complaining that thing there is out of hand?
And then there's this blocking of the internet, the blocking of information that has been that could come out of the country.
In fact, that is also another thing which is basically something against human rights and also against whatever it is. But I think those things could only take place in any country, even in South Africa, if there's a state of emergency declared.
Yes.
Yeah, so they've overstepped that thing.
Goes by the rules.
Because basically the internet is a tool where it spreads whatever it is. Yeah, so the government has acted, but it has acted out of order. Declare a state of emergency and then go to those measures.
Yes.
So they're just doing so that the protesters cannot coordinate their action.
Okay, so let us say that the crackdown succeeds and that the protests are quelled. What is the future for the country then? Is this just a return to authoritarian rule?
Well, the future of the country it depends upon just one issue. The issue is this, that the removal of the sanctions.
Okay.
You see, when Mnangagwa came in, they thought that the Chinese would come in with investment.
Yes.
But the type of investment the Chinese are coming with are long-term investment.
Yes.
And the results just
infrastructure building.
Infrastructure building. What is needed is to get commerce going.
Yes.
And that needs venture capital and things like that, short-term loans, and that comes from the banks.
That's right.
And the banks, from the time of Mugabe, they actually stood back. And in fact, that's what happened to Mugabe. You see, people talk about the nationalization of the farms.
Yes.
But people forget that before the farms were nationalized, 65% to 70% of the food that was being sold to the maize board in Zimbabwe, which was actually sold to the people, it came from black, small-scale farmers.
Yes.
And that's not my assertion. It is from the Food and Agriculture Organization, the United Nations.
Yeah.
It has been sold. Yeah. But once the nationalization came, the guys could not produce because the financial powers to actually finance the buying of fertilizer
had dried up.
It was pulled out.
Yes.
Yeah. So they know they are Achilles heel.
Yes.
And everything collapsed, and they said, "Oh, you see, the people cannot produce food; they cannot farm." No, Zimbabweans had been feeding themselves. Yes. The white farmers were growing maize before then. There were maize that was produced. It went through chicken feed.
Yes.
Through animal feed. Yeah, most of it. 75% of food stuff, grain, which was being consumed in Zimbabwe, it was grown by small-scale African farmers. So they've got the means. They know how to do it. But now it's the financial element which people are not aware of.
Okay, so what is Mnangagwa's next move?
Well, his next move is in trouble. I mean, his next move is to get in the real business people, not the Marks and Spencer people who are going to come and invest in the industry. Yeah.
But the scenes of the protests are obviously going to go against that.
You see, I was listening to another analyst. They say that those people are there. The trouble with Zimbabwe is not that the economy has gone down. The trouble is that there's not enough money in circulation. That money has been withdrawn, and there are people who are holding it back.
Yes.
It's like what happened in South Africa, to bring us in this situation. Yeah, the investors, you know, from Thabo Mbeki said so. They withheld, they had high liquidity, you know, and they're not investing it to bring the government to its knees so they can go and talk, and then they're going to release it at their own conditions.
Yes.
So basically the government has got to go and talk with those investors, no matter what color of their skin. Yeah, they've got to sit, they've got to be pragmatic and talk. Yeah, and talk and actually see what the guys want and give them the guarantees. And then you move forward. The factories are going to open tomorrow morning.
Well, Izak Khomo, thank you very much for coming in and giving us that insight to DRC and Zimbabwe. It's always a pleasure to have you in our studio.
Thank you for having me.